welcome to another episode of the Ultimate AFL Show for season 2016. Now in this episode I'm going to be looking back at round 11, which started on Friday night in Tasmania with the historic first Friday night game to ever be held in Tasmania for points. I'm going to be looking back at that match as well as the rest of the games in round 11. Now also coming up in this episode I'm going to be looking towards round 12, which is the Queen's birthday round, which finishes with the traditional Queen's birthday clash between Collingwood and Melbourne. But first, let's look back at round 11. So as I mentioned, round 11 started on Friday night in Hobart at Blundstone Arena, which was the historic first ever Friday night match for premiership points in Tasmania. The build-up was absolutely incredible, I must say. It was in the papers here in Tasmania every day of last week. The build-up was quite magnificent, and the pre-match entertainment was fantastic as well. The game, however, was a little bit disappointing. I kind of expected it to be a lot closer than it was, but I guess we've kind of forgotten how poor form Richmond were in 3 or 4 weeks ago before they started winning those 3 matches in a row. So North Melbourne pretty much blew them out of the game in the first quarter. It was 5-4 to 1-5 at quarter time, and then at half time it wasn't really much different. North Melbourne was still leading pretty convincingly, 7-9 to 3-8, and then the third quarter was where they really kind of piled on and won the match, 13-13 to 4-10 at 3-quarter time, and then in the end North Melbourne won this match pretty convincingly in what was probably the most poor game Richmond has played this year. The final score being 18-16, 124, defeating Richmond 7-12-54 at Blundstone Arena. The goal kickers for North Melbourne, Harvey kicked 4, including kicking his 500th goal of his career, which was absolutely outstanding. He ended up having 501 goals at the end of the match on Friday night. That's his career goals, of course. Wells also kicked 3, as well as Wood, who kicked 2. Thomas kicked 2, and then Atley with an incredible goal from the boundary line. Check side kicked a single. Brown, Dore, Petrie, Dos Santo, Cunningham and McMillan kicked singles each for North Melbourne. Richmond's goal kickers, Vickery, Rewalt kicked 2 each. Lloyd, Deledio and Miles kicked singles each in what was a disastrous night for Richmond. Injuries also playing a big part in their loss on Friday night as well. There was lots of drama before the match. A player pulled out with Chaplin having to come into the game just a minute before the game actually started, which was quite incredible. But just getting back to the historic night in Tasmania, this was actually the record crowd for a football match at Blundstone Arena ever. The former record was set last year between the two sides. I mentioned this in last week's episode. It was 17,544 at last year's game between these two sides. This is currently, though, the best attendance record for a football match at Blundstone Arena in 17,844. However, it is not the attendance record for any event at Blundstone Arena, because that's been beaten by the Hurricanes v Perth Scorchers in the BBL, which was set at the start of the year. 18,149 people attended that event. But the highest record crowd for a football match at Blundstone Arena. Well done, Tasmania, for showing up and getting behind what was an historic night in Hobart/Tasmania. Saturday there were 5 games of football. It started at the MCG with Hawthorn and Melbourne. Had a bit of a feeling that this would be a close kind of match, considering the trends with, lower sides, but also any other side taking up to Hawthorn this year. They haven't really had a win or many wins this year that have actually been big wins. I think the only big win they had in the year was West Coast, where they basically dominated throughout the match in round 2. Of course, pretty not very convincing wins against St Kilda, Adelaide, Richmond being one of them as well, and also Brisbane last week wasn't quite convincing. They did dominate the last quarter, even though the Lions were in it at 3-quarter time. This one seemed to go Hawthorn's way though at quarter time, 4-5 to 2-0. They had a pretty handy lead at quarter time, but Melbourne, however, were in front at halftime, 7-2 to 6-7. And then, it was an interesting game the right way through. At three-quarter time, 10-2 Melbourne to Hawthorn, 8-14. But in the end, Hawthorn was able to hold off Melbourne and get the win, 11-16, 82, defeating Melbourne, 10-4, 64. So Melbourne putting in a good performance like they have been doing this year, and actually being in the game, which they weren't really doing in previous years. But anyway, the goal kickers for Hawthorn, Gunston kicked 3, Bruce O'Brien kicked 2 each, Rioli, Hill, Stewart and Palopolo kicked singles each for Hawthorn. Melbourne's goal kickers, Kent, Watts kicked 2, Dawes, Petrarca, Hogan, Vandenberg, Tyson and Jones kicked singles each for Melbourne, and what was a good game for them. But Hawthorn were the dominant side in the end and were able to get the 4 points. The other Saturday afternoon game was at Etihad Stadium, under the roof between the Blues and the Lions. Carlton expected to win this after a good win against Geelong the week before, and in fact a good month and a half they've actually played in this competition this year. They've got good wins against Fremantle, Collingwood, just to name a few, and Geelong was a fantastic win, so they were expected to win this, and well, they dominated the first quarter. 4-3 lead Carlton had to Brisbane, 0-3. Another goalless quarter for them this year. Not very good from a Lions perspective. At half-time, Carlton still had the lead, 8-4 to 1-7. Brisbane Lions only restricted to 1 goal in the second quarter. At three-quarter time, 12-4 Carlton to Brisbane Lions, 5-7, and then in the end, Carlton really just won this game pretty convincingly, 16-6, 102, defeating the Lions, 9-10, 64. The goal kickers for Carlton, Armfield, Lamb kicked 3 each, Cripps and Wright kicked 2 each. You then had Casbolt, Tui, Gorridge, Rowe, Kerridge and Curnow kicking singles each for the Blues. The Brisbane Lion goal kickers, you have Rich who kicked 2, Freeman, Jansen, Coulter, Keys, Rockcliffe, Martin and Skay kicking singles each for the Lions in what was a hurtful loss for them, another hurtful loss for them this season. Leppage under all sorts of pressure this week, and Carlton, well, back-to-back wins. Not the first time they've done that this season though, but it's good to get another back-to-back wins. One of the games of the round and one of the games to look forward to was the Saturday twilight match between the Cats and the Giants. Stevie J visiting his old side at his old stomping ground, and well, he surprised all when he kicked the first goal of the game. Couldn't believe it. He kicked the first goal against his old side at Simmons Stadium, and that was the only goal he kicked in the match to tell you. But anyway, it was a very close game, this one, throughout the entire game. GWS led at quarter time, 4-2 to 2-3. Geelong, though, had the lead at half time in what was a very close game, 6-7 to 6-2. And then, it was a very close game, like I just mentioned, and Geelong had the lead at three-quarter time, 9-10 to 10-2, and then in the end, Geelong were able to win narrowly, 14-14, 98, defeating the Giants, 14-4, 88, so a 10-point win there for the Cats. The goal kickers in this match, Geelong, Menzel kicked 3, Guthrie, Kirsten, Hawkins kicked 2 each. Hawkins missing 1 week this week on a pretty low kind of impact punch, or I guess slap to the neck on Phil Davis, who made it look like it hurt from the top to the bottom. So he gets 1 week for that. Could have challenged, but would have been risking 2 weeks. And in fact, they've got 2 tough matches against North Melbourne and the Dogs. So got to take it on the chin, I guess, and just miss 1 week so you don't miss any more. But anyway, Hawkins kicked 2. Murdoch, Smith, McCarthy, Henderson and Selwood kicked singles each in this match for Geelong. From a GWS point of view, in the goal kickers, you have Green, who kicked 3. You have Whitfield, who also kicked 3. They had good games in this match. Scully kicked 2, and then, like I mentioned, Johnson kicked his only goal in the match in the first quarter, which was the opening goal of the game. Steele, Shield, Patton, Ward, Hopper also kicking singles in this match against the Cats in what was a very good game of football down there at Simmons Stadium. On Saturday night, there were 2 games, although there were some fears that one of them was going to be called off after that atrocious weather over at Metricon Stadium in the Gold Coast. But lucky for the competition, the game did go ahead, and even though the weather wasn't the best, it did go ahead. And I thought, the weather being what it was at Metricon Stadium, I thought the Gold Coast kind of had a little bit of a chance and a little bit of a sniff in this game, and they kind of showed that at quarter time, because they had the lead 3-2 to 1-3, although Sydney were able to take it back pretty quickly in the second quarter and lead at half time 6-6 to 4-5. At three-quarter time, the Swans were in a convincing lead, 8-13 to 5-5, and then in the end, Gold Coast lost the game 6-5-41, defeated by the Swans 11-13, 79. The Swans get another win in what is a great year for them so far. They are premiership favourites, no doubt about it at this current stage. We'll have a look at the goal kickers for Gold Coast. Sexton, Davis, Lonigan, Lynch, Rose and also Matera got singles each for the Suns at Metricon. From a Swans point of view, in terms of the goals, you had Rowan and Parker kicking 2 each, Sinclair, Lloyd, Franklin, Rose, Mitchell, Jack and Heaney kicking singles each for the Swans there at Metricon. Franklin, I remember a couple of weeks ago, John O'Brien said that Franklin is almost certain to kick a bag against the Gold Coast Suns at Metricon. Maybe if it wasn't wet, he might have done that, but didn't turn out that way. He only got the single in this match. The other Saturday night match was at Domain Stadium in Perth between the Fremantle Dockers and the Essendon Bombers. Fremantle still searching for their first win of season 2016 going into this match, and they got it pretty convincingly, winning 26-126, defeating the Bombers 6-11-47 in what was a pretty disappointing match from the Essendon Bombers. I must say, they were really okay against Richmond last week at Dreamtime at the G. Took it up to Richmond, I must say, but yeah, this match really poor. So anyway, they did drop Kelly, or not drop Kelly, I should say, they rested Kelly, which I do remember raised a lot of eyebrows, but anyway, that's what Essendon needed to do, and of course he is an old fella, so probably the right thing to do. But anyway, the goal kickers for Fremantle, Pavlich kicked 3, as well as Walters Main also kicked 3, Ballantyne kicked 2, Tabernar, Barlow, Sheraton, Tucker, Neal, Mundy, Weller, Griffin and Pearce kicked singles each for the Dockers. You then have the Bombers goal kickers, Danaher kicked 2, Goddard, Fantasia, McDonald, Tipanui kicked his first goal ever in his AFL career. He kicked a single. Harns also kicked singles in this match against the Dockers. Sunday there were 3 games. This one I thought was going to be an interesting game, and it was for the first half, but the second half I think Collingwood were really blown away by the Powers. So yeah, Port Adelaide and Collingwood at the MCG, and Port Adelaide had a good quarter time lead, 5-2 to 3-3, and then basically from there they had good leads throughout the match, and in the end it finished Collingwood 7-16-58, defeated by Port Adelaide 19-11-125. Collingwood stuffing up my tipping for this week. Had all of them right except that one. I tipped Collingwood, which was a real poor decision by me, I must admit. But anyway, the goal kickers for Collingwood, Sidebottom Cox kicked 2 each, Pendlebury, DeGoey and Grundy kicking singles each. You then have the Port Adelaide goal kickers, Neild and Young kick 4 each, Wingard kicked 3, he had a good game, Gray, Bogue, Trengrove, Westhoff, Need, Hartlett, Impey and Gray, S. Gray that is, kicking singles each for the Power in this match. So a very disappointing match for Collingwood. Travis Cloke in the spotlight again after returning to the senior side. Didn't play the best of games. I'm not really sure where Buckley is trying to play him, to be honest. In the game, I saw him up the ground and he was on the wing surrounding a ruck contest at a stoppage. Why is he there? Why is he not in the goal square? And that's what he does best, really, or what he used to do best is you know, stick in the goal square or stick in that half-forward kind of, you know, forward 50, I guess, you know, and lead up and make a lead and, you know, try and make a lead and get the ball and grab it on the chest. That's what he used to do best. And I don't know where Buckley's trying to play him. I think he's trying to play him in the ruck kind of forward role, which is not good. So if he leaves, then he probably should, because I think Buckley is not playing him in the correct positions or where he's capable of playing. Another match of the round was at Etihad Stadium between the Dogs and the Eagles. And this was always going to be a good match. Of course, Eagles coming into this match with only one win away from home this season. And the Dogs, well, they're just unstoppable at Etihad Stadium, although have been beaten there a couple of times this season. So after a bit of a, not a shaky start by the Dogs, but a bit of a, I guess, quarter where the Eagles had a lot more chances than the Dogs and a lot more inside 50s, they did trail the Dogs 4-1 to 4-4 at quarter time. At half-time, though, and what was a better quarter by the Dogs lead 6-6 to 5-4. The third quarter, though, was where the Dogs were really using their run and carry, technique and skills to really dominate the Eagles in this quarter. 10-7 to 8-6 with the three-quarter time lead, the Dogs. And then after the Eagles came back in the fourth quarter, the Dogs were able to just compose themselves and hold the Eagles off, and in the end won the match. And they are proving to be a premiership contender for this year, a massive premiership contender. They're exciting. I barrack for them, and I'm an exciting Western Bulldogs supporter as I read the score. 12-11, 83 defeating the Eagles, 11-9, 75. The goal kickers for the Dogs, Liberatore had a really good match, kicked 3 goals. Stringer Campbell and Redpath really having an impact in this game. His lead and his one-on-one contested marks are absolutely outstanding. So Stringer Campbell, Redpath kicking 2 each, and then Hunter Dunkley Picken kicking singles each for the Dogs. The West Coast goal kickers, Lacroix kicked 2, Yeo Hill, Darling also kicked 2. You then have Hutchings, Kennedy and Marston kicking singles each in this game. So a big match coming up for the Dogs this week, because this upcoming week they've got another opportunity to prove that they are premiership contenders. They've got a spot in the top 4 now after round 11. And the West Coast, well, they just can't win away from home, can they? They're quite poor at doing that, and they need to start winning away from home. That's something that they really need to do. And finally, to top off our round 11 look back, the final game was at the Adelaide Oval, Sunday twilight, between the Crows and the Saints, in what was a disappointing display by the Saints, I must say. They've gone away from home a couple of times this year and really haven't done so good, and really have put in poor performances. Domain Stadium against the Eagles was another example of that. So the final score, Crows 19-19, 133, defeating the Saints 6-9, 45. The goal kickers for the Crows, Jenkins kicked 7. He had an outstanding game. Walker kicked 3, Cameron kicked 2, McGovern, Lyons, Lynch, Jacobs, Betts, Sloan and Seedsman kicked singles each for the Crows. The Saints goal kickers, Bruce kicked 2, while Gresham, McCartan, Memberley and Rewalt kicked singles each for the Saints. Okay, time to have a look at the stats leaders after round 11. I'll start with the leading goal kickers. Lance Franklin still leads, even though he only kicked 1 goal on the weekend. He leads on 41 goals. Kennedy is right behind him on 38, even though he was kept goalless by the Dogs on the weekend, which is something the Dogs have struggled to do in recent years, but they did it, which is fantastic from a Dogs point of view. Tom Lynch is in third on 35. Jenkins 1 goal behind him on 34. And then fifth is Eddie Betts on 28. Let's have a look now at the leading disposals. Lockie Neal having a good season in terms of the disposal count. He has got 376 disposals and lead. Not far behind him, though, is Lockie Hunter from the Bulldogs. 348 disposals, having a fantastic year, Lockie Hunter. Dan Handelbury just 1 disposal behind Lockie Hunter on third on 347. Trelaw's on fourth on 337. And then Pendlebury rounds out the top 5 on 322 disposals. Leading marks, Rewalt leads the marks on 114 marks. Heath Shaw, the defender for GWS, is second on 104. Doherty is way behind Shaw in third on 88 marks. You then have Cade Simpson on 85 marks, followed by Jesse Hogan on 81 marks. And Andrew Swallow from North Melbourne is leading the tackles on 98. You then have Shields on 85 in second. Prittis, the Brownlow medalist from a couple of years ago, on 76 tackles. On 75 tackles is Ed Curnow from Carlton, and then Tom Mitchell on 75 tackles also is in fifth, although he's level with Ed Curnow. And then finally, the ladder as it stands, North Melbourne currently sit top of the table. They bounced back, of course, last Friday night at Blundstone Arena to get the win and make it 10-1 on top of the ladder. Sydney Swans, though, not far behind them on second. You then have Geelong on third. And rounding out the top four is the Western Bulldogs, who have been able to get fourth spot after that perfect win against the Eagles on Sunday. Hawthorn not far out of the top four, as well as GWS. The West Coast Eagles have fallen to seventh after being fifth at the end of round 10 last week. You then have the Adelaide Crows rounding out the top 8. The Power not sitting far behind them. And Carlton on 10th. They've risen to 10th. That's quite surprising. Melbourne on 11th. Collingwood on 12th. You also have St Kilda 13th. And then the bottom four, sits Gold Coast 15th, Fremantle 16th. So they've risen from the wooden spoon position to third last. Brisbane Lions on 17th. And then 18th is Essendon. Richmond currently sitting 14th on the ladder. Okay, time now to get into round 12, and it starts on Friday night at Etihad Stadium between Essendon and Hawthorn. This game getting underway at 7:50 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. And, Hawthorn have won 4 of the last 5 clashes against Essendon. So Essendon is going to be faced with a tough task to beat Hawthorn this week. And I guess the trend of Hawthorn winning narrowly against the smaller sides, or at least by most sides this season, will definitely, give Essendon a bit more confidence going into this game. But I think Hawthorn will record their biggest win of the season this year, possibly bigger than their win against the West Coast Eagles in round 2. So I'm tipping Hawthorn for this match on Friday night. Saturday there are 4 games. It starts with a Saturday afternoon game at the Adelaide Oval between the Port Adelaide Power and the Western Bulldogs. This game getting underway at 1:40 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. That's 1:10 p.m. for all those Adelaide people. So 1:10 Adelaide time, I guess you could say. And the Dogs are yet to win at Adelaide Oval after 2 games, both against the Power. But also, this is only the Western Bulldogs' second travel away from Melbourne, or the second interstate travel for them this season. They haven't won interstate this season. So if they win this one, then it proves that they can win interstate, because it could be that they have to verse a team interstate in the finals. It's a possibility. It could happen maybe against the Swans, maybe against another team. Of course, North Melbourne, Geelong currently sit in the top 4, so they won't have to travel very far for those games. But anyway, I think they'll win this game, though, the Dogs. I think they'll be just a bit too strong for Port Adelaide. The Dogs are actually the number 1 team in disposals this season so far. Port Adelaide, though, they've had good wins in the last 2 weeks, and they will be hard to beat at the Adelaide Oval, but I think the Dogs will be a bit too strong. They might win by about 20 odd points. The Saturday twilight game is between the Lions and the Dockers at the Gabba. This game starting at 4:35 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. And Fremantle have won the last 5 games against the Lions, one of them being at the Gabba just a couple of years ago. So I think Fremantle will record back-to-back wins this week against the Lions. 2 Saturday night games. One of them is at Etihad Stadium between the Cats and North Melbourne. Of course, the 2 Scott brothers meet for the first time this season in what will be an interesting clash. It is first v third, of course, and this game at Etihad Stadium starting at 7:25 p.m. North Melbourne has won the last 3 against Geelong, one of them each being at Etihad Stadium, MCG and Simmons Stadium, if that makes sense. So North Melbourne have won at all those venues in the last 3 against Geelong. So going to be a good game, this one. Of course, Geelong missing Hawkins, which is a big out for them. But best to miss 1 week than 2. I'm going to tip North Melbourne, though. I think last week they were quite outstanding at Blundstone Arena on Friday night. They really did demolish Richmond, and even though this will be a tougher task, I think they'll win against the Cats. The final game of Saturday night, round 12, is between the West Coast Eagles and the Adelaide Crows. This is Don Pike against his former side in the West Coast Eagles. We know that Don Pike was there last season as an assistant coach and part of the coaching panel, so this will be his first meeting against them. This game starting at 7:40 PM Australian Eastern Time. In WA time, that's 5:40 PM. And yeah, I'm going to tip the West Coast Eagles. I think they're pretty strong at home, as we've seen. They're undefeated at home this season, but of course they've got to do that interstate against interstate teams away from home, which is something they haven't been able to do this season. The Adelaide Crows, though, they will be hard to beat going into this match, and they played a good game against the Saints, but I think the West Coast Eagles will just be a little bit too strong. Looking forward to this game. There's two really decent Saturday night games this week, and this is just one of them out of Geelong, North Melbourne as well. Sunday there are 3 games and 2 of them are in Melbourne. I'll start with the opening game of Sunday at 1:10 PM at Etihad Stadium between St Kilda and Carlton. These two have fought out good battles over the last couple of years, but Carlton have won the last 4, so they'll be going into this match probably favourites. And they should win this match, but I do expect this to be a good game of football. This game starting 1:10 PM at Etihad Stadium, as I mentioned. The Sunday mid-afternoon game is between Richmond and the Gold Coast Suns, 2 struggling teams of this season. And this is actually the first time they've both met at the MCG and played a game against each other at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. In recent years, they've actually played at Kazali Stadium, so they haven't actually met too many times in Melbourne. But anyway, this game, as I mentioned, 3:20 PM at the MCG. Looking forward to this one, sort of. It's against 2 bottom teams. I would probably expect Richmond more than capable of winning this match, though, and if they lose this match, then problems, if there's not enough problems already at Richmond. The final game of Sunday, and probably the match of the round for me. There is a few matches of the round in this round 12, but this one is probably the most fascinating and probably the match of the round of Sunday, no doubt about it. So this game between the GWS Giants and the Sydney Swans. This game starting at 4:40 PM at Spotless Stadium. The last time the GWS defeated the Swans was when the Swans made the grand final back in 2014. That was at Spotless Stadium, but since then the Swans have been able to get over the line against the Giants. It's going to be a pretty tough task for the Giants because the Swans are in very good form. So, but I'm expecting a good match because the GWS Giants in the last 2 matches, even though they have lost, they haven't actually played that badly. Last week was a pretty close loss against the Cats, and of course at Simmons Stadium, always going to be a tough task. But anyway, I'm going to tip the Swans. I think they're in great form. They're premiership favourites for me. They'll probably most likely make the grand final. If they don't this year, I'd be very surprised. But I'm going to tip the Swans. The final game of round 12 is the traditional Queen's Birthday clash between Collingwood and Melbourne at the MCG at 3:20 PM. Now, Melbourne haven't actually won a Queen's Birthday clash since 2007. There was a draw in 2010. That's the closest they've got to a win in the last few years. Of course, Melbourne have actually won the last 2 against Collingwood, so they are probably going to be going in favourites for this match, and this will probably be the best opportunity they have of winning a Queen's Birthday clash out of the clashes they've played Collingwood since 2007, when their last win came in a Queen's Birthday clash. So this game, like I mentioned, 3:20 PM. I am going to tip Melbourne for this game. To be honest, I expected a better performance by Collingwood last week, considering what I saw at the MCG against the Dogs. But I guess injuries have really hurt them this season, and I think Melbourne being the better side on this day, in my opinion. And that is it for this episode of the Ultimate AFL Show. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe. I do so much other content on this channel that you might be interested in checking out. So don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Bevob5. Of course, there's a Facebook page for the Bevob5 Productions, and you can also follow Bevob5 Productions on Twitter at Bevob5P. So until next week's episode of the Ultimate AFL Show, I'm Jacob. Enjoy round 12. Bye for now.